Pittsburgh Steelers fans, what's going on? This is Jeff Hartman, editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, with you for another and the final Steelers postgame of the 2019 regular season. As the Steelers season is officially over, they got embarrassed today at M&T Bank Stadium by the Baltimore Ravens. Final score 28-10, and we have a lot to talk about. But first, before I even introduce my co-host, which is not Lance Williams, he can't join the show tonight. This game was technically meaningless because the Tennessee Titans beat the Texans, and so therefore they were in a win and in situation. I bring in Dave Schofield. How's it going, Dave?
You watch the game. You know how it's going.
Bryan Anthony Davis.
I swear I am so glad I turned down tickets for that game. I would be in jail right now. I would have probably fought somebody. And it's not all because of the way the Steelers played, which was criminal, but it was just the fact. And I'm a peace-loving dude. You guys all know that. I get along with everybody. But the way that they conducted themselves in purple was just irreprehensible. And I am beyond words.
Well, what we always start, and I'm sure you all listen to the post-game show. I know Dave does. We always start with knee-jerk reactions. And I know Bryan writes the article, which just published on BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. Check that out if you haven't yet. Let's go and start with you, Bryan. You obviously have a lot you want to talk about in terms of Wang Harbs, or that's our nickname for John Harbaugh. Your thoughts on how he coached the Ravens in this 28-10 win?
First of all, I think he is a fantastic coach. And if you're just basing it on the way he prepares his team and the and how they win, this was a fantastic coaching year. They broke the record for rushing that was the 1978 Patriots record. But I just think he is. I wish we had the bleeping machine, because I'd like to say what I really think he is, because it's not just a Wang. I hate this guy. I've hated this guy for years.
Oh, now, I know that, but what did you hate about the way he coached?
First of all, you guys disagreed with me, and I get it, but the fake punt on your 11-yard line, I thought was just the start of trying to rub it in. And I realized they only had a 9-point lead, but here's the thing. They knew that this team wasn't moving. They saw how horrible Duck Hodges was. In that rain, they knew nothing was going to happen. But when you go ahead and you throw the ball, a bomb with 4 minutes and 30 seconds left, and you've got a huge lead, and then you come out on the field with 26 seconds left or so, and you go for it on fourth down. Even RG3 was angry about that because he got picked off. He's like, why were we even doing that? They called a timeout. This was nothing but trying to rub it in. I've been mad since 2011 when they were up 25-26 on September 11th, that opening day beating that the Steelers took, and he went for a 2-point conversion late in the fourth quarter. This guy is a stark, raving butthole, and I can't stand him. And you should have heard. I celebrated so much. I celebrated so much when Hayden got that interception, because it was like there, and I'm yelling some stuff. My wife's like, "What's wrong with you? Did they win?" Like, no, they got killed. But it's just he's just that kind of jerk, and I can't stand him.
Well, we talked about this via text message, the three of us. I didn't have a problem with the fake punt. Is it classy? No. Do we expect him to be classy? Well, you shouldn't. But at the same time, if the Steelers stop it, then by all means, he looks like a fool, and the Steelers are set up at the 11-yard line with it. Well, I can't say they were guaranteed to score because this is the Steelers offense we're talking about. But still, I mean, what I'm saying is that I was more ticked off with the deep passes being called in the waning minutes of the game. You know, there's like 5 minutes left or so. RG3's chucking the ball down the field. You're up 28-10. There's a time and place for that type of stuff. I don't think that's that. But then again, it follows suit for Harbaugh. And Dave, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was the one who piped up first and said that I didn't have a problem as much as Bryan did with the fake punt. It's not that I don't see where it's coming from. I do. But at the same time, if he's going to do a move like that you should have been ready for and able to stop, You need to make his weightiness look bad is what you need to do. If he's going to be weighing Harbaugh, you need to step up and not let stuff like that beat you. So that's what I would say about that one. Now, towards the end, I mean, obviously the Steelers were not even, they didn't take their time out. They even ran the ball when they got the ball back on the interception. They weren't fighting for the very last second. Everyone knew what was going on. So taking the deep shot seemed that was more like, let's give RG3 a chance to either pad his stats or show that he can still throw the ball or something. And I'm like, that's if both teams are kind of saying, hey, we're soaking wet, let's just get out of the stadium because the outcome's already determined, then don't do something like that.
I want to bring up Kyle Smith's comment. He put $5 in the tip jar. For those that might be just listening for the first time, the tip jar is where you can donate money to the show. It highlights your comment and guaranteed that we're going to put it up on the screen. And all you do is down by the comment bar on the right is a little dollar sign. You can click that, give us any amount of money, and we appreciate any donations. As you can see, all three of us now have these new microphones. The sound quality has improved tremendously. I hope you all enjoy it, but your donations have helped buy these for our shows. So Kyle says, I've never seen a first-round bust dance more than Bob Griffin. 11 for 21 for 96 yards passing and 1 interception. You know, there are certain things that happen in games, especially rivalry games, and it just really gets under my skin. And watching him get up, and the outcome was decided, and just really being classless. Now, this is not a typical RG3 person. Okay, now we've seen him in Washington. We've seen him in Cleveland. And he was never that type of player. Am I right or am I wrong? I could be wrong.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I've seen him as a classy guy. Just in this situation, I thought he was.
No, it's this team. It's this organization.
Hey,
they're arrogant.
Tucker did it. Tucker did a stupid dance too.
Oh my gosh. This basically has reignited. If there was ever a lull in this rivalry, to me, in my own personal brain, which means nothing in the grand scheme of the NFL landscape, this reignited the Ravens rivalry. I want nothing more than for them to have a week off and to lose in the first round.
Oh, I'm praying for it. And I know there's other things to pray for, but I am praying for that. And real quick, this is spiteful, Brian. This is the guy. Bringing out the old
for Brian.
I'm bringing out the old nickname, Robert Sniffin' the Turd.
I forgot about that one. Dave, what are your thoughts on the celebrations and things of that nature?
Well, I'm saying we also did not add anything into it when our philosophy was every time he hands the ball off, because it's a fake, we're going to hit him. Because to me, that was more of a message almost towards Lamar Jackson that, hey, if you're going to constantly run the fake with the quarterback, then your quarterback is free to take a shot on. And the Steelers did that the whole game. And so if we're constantly taking shots, which is legal. But I'm not saying it's not illegal.
No, I know. But there's a lot of people online we're saying that that's a cheap shot. And Dan Fouts, who I hate, I'll get to that in a second, kept on saying, it's a penalty if I've ever seen one. No, it's not. Go ahead, Dave.
Well, the one he pointed out was probably the latest one out of all of them. You know what I mean? Yeah. It was a little bit more. But you always have the argument of, I couldn't tell if he handed off the ball or not. But they made sure their philosophy was, if the quarterback's going to fake it, hit him every time. You know, and that's what they did. And maybe that's kind of what got him a little bit fired up with his dance. I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying the Steelers had a philosophy, and I like it. And I like it. I like that they did that. And I hope other NFL playoff teams took note of it and do the same thing.
You know, the funny thing is that James Harrison was on what show is it on? Is it Fox that he goes on every now and then? It's the same. I think it's Fox.
Yeah, it's not Fox. I was say Fox and Friends. That would have been way wrong.
Is it Undisputed or whatever?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's not that one, but I know. And he talked about Lamar Jackson, and he said, you know, when I played for Dick LeBeau, and if we ever played like a Michael Vick type, he would tell us every time that quarterback has the ball, even if he hands it off, you hit him. You hit him so many times that he doesn't want to run that play. He doesn't want to even have the ball in his hands that long, because obviously when you played a guy like Michael Vick, you wanted him to throw the ball. And that's the Steelers' approach would have been that same way with Lamar. I'll tell you what, RG3 got beat up. He got beat up today. Yeah. And if I'm weighing Harbs, I'm like, this is exactly why we didn't play Lamar Jackson, because why would I expose him to this, abuse, physical abuse, so to speak? But it just rubbed me the wrong way. I'm okay with celebrating, but sometimes it goes over the line, and it's the fact that it's the Ravens doesn't help.
Did you notice something at the end of the game after Hayden had that interception and Watt goes over to him on the bench and he's talking to him and Hayden's laughing, and you could tell that Watt was emphatically telling him something? I think it might have been something like, they're lucky you picked that off, or we were going to light somebody up. I mean, I was just wondering what they were saying there.
Watt he always plays with a fire. He seemed to me, and guys, you can disagree, he seemed like he was playing angry today.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
He seemed like he had a different edge about him in this game. And, people criticized him for when he jumped and tried to knock down the pass. He lands and kind of throws his forearm into RG3, and RG3 flops like a soccer player.
Yeah,
and
that was a flop.
Draws a flag and stuff. But I'll say this while we bring up TJ Watt. I tweeted this out on our Behind the Steel Curtain Twitter feed, BT Steel Curtain. If you don't follow us, please do. When I think about TJ Watt in the Defensive Player of the Year talk, the sacks are tremendous. Don't get me wrong. He finished the year with 15 and a half, Dave? Brian? Who knows? He got credited for half a sack today.
So that's 14 and a half.
14. That's right. He needed 2. You're right. Okay, so 14. It's a good number. That's a tremendous number. And he's only in his 3rd year. But here's the thing. The forced fumbles are more impressive to me than anything, because those are turnovers. Those are extra possessions. And those are a lot more difficult to come by, in my opinion, than just a sack from an edge rusher. You guys agree with that?
Oh, yeah. He's perfecting that punch.
He has perfected that punch. And that's Dave. I mean, I'm not saying that the sacks don't matter. When we're talking about Defensive Player of the Year, you have to be the total package. I think that the forced fumbles, that's a crazy number. I don't even know what his total was. I forgot to check before we went on the air, but it's amazing. And I think that boosts his value regarding Defensive Player of the Year. Dave, anything to add?
Yeah. I'm sorry. No.
You were looking up the number?
I was trying to look at that number for you. No, I was frozen. For some reason, when I'm trying to actually go in and get the number, it caused me to freeze. So I don't know if I can get that for you. What I want to know is, what was the total number of takeaways that they ended up having on the season as well? So, because, I mean, they added 2 more, and I was thinking they were – what were they?
Let me hold on. I had the takeaway tab here. I just have to add 2. That's the wrong one. Here we go. Go ahead, Dave. Do you have his total forced fumbles?
Well, coming into this game, he had, where's the forced fumbles? There they are. He had 7 forced fumbles coming into the game. So that would make it, I guess that would leave him with 8.
That's amazing. So they had 36, tied for New England for first overall in the NFL. Seattle Seahawks, who have yet to play, had 32, and they were obviously in 3rd. So the Steelers had 2 takeaways today. So it leaves them with 38 on the season. That's a remarkable uptick from one year to the next. Absolutely tremendous.
So, and remember how we said if they got to 25, that would be a really great improvement before the season started?
Oh, yeah. So, all right, Dave, knee-jerk reaction from you? Anything?
It's funny. My knee-jerk reaction is I wanted to see the Steelers come out and be able to just run the ball, which would allow them to open up their offense, which would allow them to do something that I expected them, more than what I expect them to do. I only predicted them to score 6 points in this game. I thought they could get 2 scores, but they'd have to settle for field goals. They were able to run the ball and get it in the touchdown zone. There you go, Brian.
Thank you.
Which was nice. But that's all I wanted to see is to see them run the ball. And the thing is, the Ravens knew they were going to try to run the ball, but the disappointing knee-jerk reaction thing to me was the Steelers knew that that's all the Ravens were going to try to do was run the ball. And this defense gave up over 200 yards rushing when you knew that's exactly what they were going to do.
Yeah, I even tweeted that out. I said, everyone in the stadium knows that they're going to run the ball. The Steelers, the woman selling peanuts in the third deck, they all know they're going to run. And stopping it is a different story because obviously they set a new record for most rushing yards in a season. But that was a disappointing aspect. Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, they once again, it was a winnable ball game though. Even though the defense didn't stop them, RG3 had 95 yards through the air. They knew that's what they could do. They just couldn't stop them. They were missing tackles. Terrell Edmonds looked horrible in that one touchdown, as always, but it's still a winnable game, and the offense gave you nothing. So even with all that, they were in that ball game. This was a very winnable game for the Steelers early on, and they lost it at the end of the half there when they gave up that touchdown.
No, you're right. And Lance and I talk about this ad nauseum in the post-game show, and that's the famous Joe Gibbs quote where he talked about how a football game can be boiled down to like 3 or 4 plays. You have typically well over 100 plays run and or around there. 3 or 4 can kind of turn the tide. That was such a deflating play, the Devlin Hodges fumble. And to me, it just kind of encapsulated duck season, so to speak, because everything up until that point wasn't bad. He was managing the game well. They were actually running the ball well. They got away from that for some reason in the second half. I'm not sure why. And then it just didn't make sense for him not to just take the sack. You have 3 timeouts, call a timeout, live to play another day. The ball security was awful. That was so deflating on so many levels. And I got to be honest, I think that was one of the reasons why what was the score when that happened? Did the Steelers have the lead at that time?
Yeah.
7-6?
Yeah, it was 7-6.
And then all of a sudden they go down and score a touchdown, completely changes everything. So, all right, we have Isaac here. He wants to give $5. We appreciate that, Isaac. He's a longtime viewer and listener. He said, duck season is over, finally. Sad that there's no more Steeler football, but I don't need this kind of frustration. I understand it. This has been a crazy season, and I want everyone to know, I'll take the time here to say that we are not going anywhere. BehindTheSteelCurtain.com will continue to churn out content for you, articles from breaking news to commentary to film room, everything that you can think of, we're going to provide all off season. So there's not like, all right, we take a week off, we'll see you in 2 weeks. No, that's not how we roll. Our podcast platform will still continue to churn out content. So stick with us. And as always, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, set up your notifications so that you get a email, a text alert, whatever it is, so that you know whenever we go live. We do have some programming changes that we're going to talk about at some point, but now's not the time to do it. Snowman, he also puts $5 in the tip jar. He said, who gets fired? Some coach needs to go. I vote for Coach Randy. Well, it's going to get brought up sooner or later, guys, so let's talk about it. Dave, if a coach gets fired, who gets fired?
All right, just one point of correction that they did. I was starting to think after we said it was 7-6. I'm like, or did the Ravens just kick a field goal? And they confirmed it in the live chat that it was actually 9-7. Yeah, it was 9-7 when that was going on.
But getting the ball to start the third at 9-7 compared to what happened is
exactly. So, but still, that made it just as bad. So, who gets fired?
People say
nobody.
People say Mike Tomlin absolutely drives me nuts.
No one's going to get fired. No one's going to get fired. I don't think anyone's going to get fired. I mean, I'm not saying that no one deserves to get fired.
Okay, let's let who if you were running the Steelers, who would you fire if you had to fire someone?
Like I say, I've been back and forth with the Randy Fiedler thing. I've been his harshest critic, and then I realized that I've been in those coaching situations where I had nothing. I told the story I think I told it on various different podcasts before about my last season coaching the very first game. We didn't practice the first several days, or my head coach wouldn't let us do it. He didn't want the freshmen bothering the seniors. So I had a hardly any time to prepare my team for our game. And before halftime, I looked at my offensive sheet and said to my assistant coach, they can't run any of these plays. I've got nothing I can call that could actually work. And I'm like, I've been there. So I kind of feel a little bit for Coach Fiedner. But then I forgot what happened in week 2. You know what I did in week 2? I had a whole new offense. I had an entire new offense.
Yes.
I wasn't just lining it up in I formation, trying to run the ball with kids that didn't know how to block. I put us in shotgun and spread and ran quick passes. So all they had to do was either block to their right gap or block to their left gap. And I did that in a week. You know, he had the whole season with these guys now, and things weren't working. You can't say, well, we didn't have the players. Well, you know what you do? You have to come up with something drastic. And the only thing they really ever did was say, let's just put 72 in and have him eligible more, or let's run the Wildcat. That was the only answer they had for how many weeks was it? How many weeks? So now I'm getting really mad at him again because he had the time to do something big, do something drastic, completely change your style. I don't care, but do something then that brings out the best in the players that you actually have. And they did nothing on offense.
Okay, I think I know the answer to the question for Bryan, but Bryan, is there anyone other than Randy Fiedner that you would fire?
Oh yeah, Danny Smith Jr. No soda for you. You've got to go. He's got to go. He's horrendous.
He has naked photos of someone.
Yeah.
How he stayed around this long. It's like him and Daniel McCullers. They've got dirt on someone.
I mean, I think he probably was. He ever at Arkansas State with with Tomlin and
oh no, they were all at Memphis.
Butler. Oh, was it Memphis? I thought it was Arkansas State.
No, they weren't all there at the same time, but Butler, Fiedner, and Tomlin all coached at Memphis at one point.
Okay,
Butler was there at the same time as Tomlin, and Butler was there at the same time as Fiedner, but Fiedner and Tomlin were not there at the same time.
Okay. Well, I thought it was something about Arkansas State.
That might be one too, but I know they also have Memphis.
You know, here's the thing. Danny Smith has got to go, but Fiedner does too. And by the way, Dave, that story that you tell, you did adjust. And that's what you're saying. They didn't hear. I would love to go back in time, and this is probably putting you in a bad spot, Dave. But if I had a time machine, I'd go back in time and I'd fire that head coach who didn't want to have the freshmen near the seniors. That's horrendous coaching. What the heck is wrong with that guy? He's not still coaching, is he?
No.
Is that guy still coaching?
No, my assistant coach that I talked to and told
I met that guy. That guy's a good dude.
But he's now the varsity coach.
Who, if I had a podcast for that high school back then, I'd be all over that guy, and everybody in town would hate me because I'd have the entire town hating him because I would make up nicknames and I'd have a campaign hashtag fire that dude. But anyways, you know, Fiedner, he's not going to go anywhere. You know why? You know why?
Because Ben's coming back.
Ben's coming back. Ben won't let you get rid of his guy because the offensive coordinator is coming back. But when Ben gets hurt again, because he's 400 pounds right now, how's he going to lose that? Jeff, you need to go train Ben. Seriously. I mean, he really, I think he's going to be in the new Ghostbusters movie as the giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I mean, he's gigantic right now. Now, I shouldn't be saying anything because I'm large and in charge of myself, but really, that's your offensive coordinator. And he's coming back next year, but you know he's not going to play 16 games.
You want a dark horse in this discussion? If the Steelers don't renew Keith Butler's contract. His contract is up.
And that's what we said before the season started.
And if they don't, they promote Terrell Austin to the defensive coordinator position.
Which will tell you who was really calling the defense this year.
Exactly. I'm not saying that's what I would want, because if you get rid of Keith Butler, you're having to find another linebacker coach, an outside linebacker coach. And so I'm just saying the dark horse in this whole spiel is possibly Keith Butler. So just thinking outside the box there. Mark Davidson, he's our buddy from down under. He said, "Good day, fellas. The Pittsburgh Steelers 2019 season ends today. However, the lads played great football and with heart. Thank you, BTSC, for all your hard work and 2 a.m. jokes. Thank you for tuning in from all the way down in Australia." Did you see Jordan Berry try to do the Australian rules football, hitting it forward with his hand?
God bless him. He tried.
He's horrible. He
Yeah,
is
he's
horrible.
terrible.
Guys, that was my fault. Right before they went to run that punt, I said, "Gee, with all the bad weather, I'm surprised no one's had a bad snap or anything today." And it wasn't a bad snap, but he just completely just
Well, the funny thing is,
dropped it.
if you've coached anything, if you've had good coaches in your life in any sport, if a good coach will tell you that you can never blame the weather for anything because
you're both
teams
playing
are
in
playing in it. So I don't want to hear Jordan Berry talk about I bobbled the ball because it was slippery. Well, Sam Koch didn't bobble any passes or shotgun snaps, long snaps, whatever. Justin Tucker slipped and fell on his butt and still made a 47-yarder.
And they got up and danced. So you cannot Milli Vanilli this. You cannot blame it on the rain.
There you go. King Me 31 puts $5 in the tip jar, says nobody is getting fired. They need to add to their staff, hire a linebackers coach, hire a real offensive coordinator. Although I agree with you, King Me 31, that they're not going to fire anyone. If they were to get a real offensive coordinator, they would have to fire Randy Fichtner. And they do have linebackers coaches, the inside linebacker coach and Jerry Olsavsky and Keith Butler. They could bring in an outside linebacker coach. I always thought that it would be good to bring Kevin Green back when he was available.
Yep.
If there's a guy that knows how to get to the quarterback, it's Kevin Green. And that was his specialty, was just rushing the passer. So, all right, here we go. Let's go over some topics. Our buddy Lance, he was sending me all these topics he wants to go over, and they were actually pretty good. Give him a little credit here. Okay, if you had to label this season as good, great, or just okay, so now that it's over, how would you label it? Dave, we'll start with you.
This isn't fair because this is still knee-jerk because it's right after this bad loss and everything, and where the Steelers, they just needed to win a couple games in the last 3 weeks and they didn't do it. So because you got to that point and then fell off at the end, what were my three options again?
Good, great, or just okay?
Right now, I would call it just okay because we're coming off of the last few weeks. But honestly, when you think about it, it was a good season considering everything that happened, because there is no way that you thought that this team would have been led by their defense when this season started. If Ben went out and we got bad quarterback play, you would have just assumed that this team was drafting in the top 5, and that was the pick that they gave up to Miami. But between the bad quarterback play after losing Ben, and for them to win as many games as they did and to be in so many games that they were in because of this defense, that was just a really big, pleasant surprise. So it had to be at least good. It had to be at least good.
Okay, that was prime Dave Schofield waffling there. Love it.
Well,
absolutely love it.
Yes.
Bryan, let's see if we can get a straight answer from you. What would you say, good, great, or just okay?
First of all, Lance, I love you, man, but that's like giving me a menu and saying, all right, you could choose from the liver, you can choose from the beets, and you can choose from the something else. Crap.
Sardines.
Yeah, the sardines. Seriously.
You don't like those 3 items?
Gosh, I hate all that stuff. I'm just one of those really bad American eaters where I just like people make fun of me for wanting to have peanut butter and jelly with a crust cut off, which I've never had, but people say that. And but here's the thing, I can't answer any of those. I can't use any of those categories. You know what they should have been, Lance? And like I said, I love you, man, but they should have been, was this season bizarre, inspiring, or was it just plain unfortunate? That's what it should be, because this really wasn't a situation where it couldn't be just okay, because it was inspiring because of where they came from after the 1-4 start. It was bizarre for all the weird injuries and all the crazy stuff that happened and especially what led up to the season with losing Mr. 3rd and 5th, with everything. With the fact that you had at the end the 4th and 5th options at quarterback out there, that's bizarre, inspiring, unfortunate because of all the injuries as well. So I mean, if I say just okay, it's not just okay, it's more inspiring than anything. There's no way it was great, because they didn't make the playoffs. So I really can't answer that at all.
Lance, I hope you're listening. They are butchering this segment. I mean, Dave spent 5 minutes waffling around. Bryan basically
if you let us split it up to offense and defense, that makes it easy.
Gosh, no, because I told Lance we're not going to do season-ending stuff like for specifics. We're going to have a lot of time to do that on all our podcasts, and we'll do all that plenty.
Yep.
And then Bryan spends 5 minutes changing every topic and bouncing all over God's.
Well, then tell us the answer, Jeff.
Talking about liver. Answer. I'll give you my answer.
Can you really answer that, Lance? I mean, not Lance, Jeff.
I am not Lance Williams, but yeah, I can. I would say that this season was good, borderline, great. Why? Because if you would have told me about all the injuries that this team faced and some of the trades and acquisitions that were made, I probably would have never guessed that 8-8, or should I say that at one point they were in the driver's seat entering December for a playoff spot. If you would have said that you were going to have Devlin Hodges as the quarterback of your team at that time, I would have said there's no way at all. Knowing what we know, knowing how everything went down, I'd say it's good, borderline great. And I did like that Flip Fisher for BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. He does a lot of film room stuff for us. He wrote a really good article that ran today around noon about how the Steelers, win or lose today against the Ravens, the fans should be excited about the future. And I agree 100%. He was, if you read Flip's stuff, he's not the most optimistic guy, but he is definitely optimistic about the team's future. And I agree 100%. I am also I'm a very optimistic Steeler fan. You guys know that. But I would say it was a good to great season, all things considered. Now, if you're someone that says, well, Steelers are only labeled by Super Bowl wins, then obviously nothing is going to be ever good or great. Everything's going to be awful because they haven't won a Super Bowl since Super Bowl 43 in 2009. So if you want to live in that world, that realm, you're going to live a miserable life.
Well,
go ahead with your rebuttals.
Oh, no. What I was going to say is you've got to remember it all comes down to expectations, too, coming into the season. And the expectations completely changed after week 2. Everything changed after week 2. And that's what makes it different. You also got to remember that that what makes seasons great is you look at it this way. You could be that team that was the preseason Super Bowl winner that ends up losing to a 1-14 team in the very last week of the season. Yeah. So, when you judge it against that, it was a good, or I'll say very good, which is right in between. I think it was a very good season.
And I understand that expectations change. At 0-3 and 1-4. At 1-4, they had only beaten the winless Bengals. Okay, or I'm sorry, at either 0-3. They're 1-3. Yeah. Okay, so they'd only beaten the winless Bengals. A lot of people just said, "Gosh, this is awful. We just gave up our first round pick. It's probably going to be like a top 10 pick, if not top 5. This is ridiculous. I can't believe we're doing this." And all of a sudden, if you would have said, "Well, you guys might come back and be vying for a playoff spot." What, really? And then as they go on their little streak in the month of November, things change, expectations change. I don't think for me, as I look at from a grand scheme of the entire season, that doesn't skew. It doesn't skew what happened in the last 3 games, as bad as it was. So, all right. Steven puts $5 in the tip tray. He suggests that we publish our podcast schedule each week. Steven, I wish that my life and that Bryan's life and that Dave's life was conducive to such a strict schedule. It just isn't. We're all family men. We all have other responsibilities. And sometimes we might say a show is going to start at 8:30 and it doesn't start till 9:30. It's not intentional. We will try to give you a Monday through Friday schedule so that you know what day shows are going to be. And I'll get that out on the website in the coming days. But we just can't give you that hardcore time because I'd hate to write down that Bryan Anthony Davis's Steelers Hangover is going to be every Monday at 5 p.m. And all of a sudden Tony gets hung up in traffic or at work and he doesn't get home till 5:45 and people are like, oh, they're supposed to start at 5. So not going to do that. All right. The schedule is the schedule, Dennis.
I
Very
love
good.
Dennis. I want to party with Dennis.
I couldn't help it.
That's good. No, I like it. All right.
Guys, can I throw some numbers out there to you?
Well, we normally go into numbers, so go for it.
Well, here's a question. When was the last time the Steelers had 200 yards or more of offense?
This is embarrassing. I know it happened this season.
Yeah. Oh, no, they did this season.
The Los Angeles game?
That is correct. It was the Rams. You got to go all the way back to the Rams game for the last time the Steelers had over 200 yards of offense.
So let's talk about this for a little bit. You're without your quarterback. We know that. You're without your top running back and your top wide receiver. But your offensive line is intact. What the heck is going on? Because if I recall, Dave and Bryan, correct me if I'm wrong, at the beginning of the season, they were putting up over 20 points almost regularly, weren't they? I mean, they were close to 30 a couple times, right?
Well, they did not in week 1.
Well, I'm talking about since when Ben went down after.
Mm-hmm. I can tell you exactly what they scored every week because I have it right in front of me.
They put up 20. I don't have it in front of me. They put up 26 against Seattle, and they put up 20.
That's correct.
They put up 20 against San Francisco. They put up a lot against the Ravens. They put it in the 20s, but I can't tell you exactly.
You're missing the Bengals.
The Bengals, they
27 against the Bengals, 23. Yep. 3 against the Ravens, 24 against the Chargers, and 27 against the Dolphins, and 26 against the Colts.
All offensive outputs that would have won them a ton of games down the stretch. What went wrong? Like, what changed that backup quarterbacks were still the constant, and yet the result was drastically different? Dave, any thoughts?
Simple. Tape. They knew what you were doing, and you didn't vary what you were doing enough to stay ahead of the curve.
It all goes back to Randy Land.
It all goes back to Randy Land. You didn't add enough to keep other teams off. What I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say because I'm still so frustrated with it. Just they weren't guessing. They weren't having to guess. They knew when you did this, that's what you were going to do. You weren't changing your tendencies enough. You weren't evolving your game plan enough week to week.
What about you, Bryan? You agree with them?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I just think some personnel is getting long in the tooth and other personnel wasn't ready to play. Wasn't ready for prime time. Because if you look at it, if we take the entire offense and you say thumbs up or thumbs down, you would take thumbs down to every single skill position and even the offensive line. You're going to say, if I say offensive line, you would say thumbs down. Quarterback, you're saying thumbs down. Running game, go ahead. Play the game with me.
Thumbs down.
Oh, running game, thumbs down.
Wide receivers.
Thumbs down.
Tight ends.
Well, I'm not going to say thumbs down on wide receivers because I thought that with the injuries that they had at that position, a guy like Deontay Johnson, he looks like he's a special player in the making. You all agree?
Yeah, I agree. And I actually think that James Washington is too.
That's the only position where it's not a definitive thumbs down.
Okay. But Juju,
tight ends thumbs down because they didn't use him.
No, they didn't.
Yeah.
This offense is awful.
Yeah.
I just laughed at myself when I looked at the last 3 games, all 3 losses. Steelers offensive output, 10-10-10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the high-scoring world of the 2019 NFL, they're averaging 10 points over their last 3 games. The 3-game losing streak. So much for Mike Tomlin's stellar December record.
Yeah, that's true. Didn't even think about that.
What other numbers you have there, Dave?
This was the 6th time in 2019 that the Baltimore Ravens had more rushing yards than their opponents did total offensive yards.
All right, don't bring up stats. They're going to make me angry. Okay, I hate the Ravens. They're really under my skin right now.
No, my point was we knew that was bad. We knew that they rushed the ball more than what the Steelers did in total offense, but they did it 6 other times. They even did it to the Houston Texans, was one of them. So it's just, I was frustrated that they didn't stop the run because they should have known it was coming, but yet that's just what they were going against.
Sometimes it's easier said than done.
Exactly.
Someone has to do what the Steelers did, and they just have to hit Lamar Jackson over and over and over again. I'm not saying you go out there trying to hurt him, but you hit him over and over and over again. It's the only way you're going to get to him.
Yeah, well, but here's something that's going to make you feel a little bit better, and then it's going to frustrate you as well. If you look at points, the Steelers gave up the touchdown off of the turnover. They gave the touchdown on the bad punt. They gave up the 2 points on the safety. The defense, other than right off the turnover at the very end of the half, kept them out of the end zone. They only gave up 4 field goals. But even if they only gave up, let's say they don't fumble the ball away at the end of the first half, and they don't have the punt that they give up 7 points, and they don't have the safety, they still lose 12-10. Because the offense couldn't do anything. If you think about it, the defense really, on actual normal drives, the Steelers defense only gave up 4 field goals, and that was it.
Yeah, you're right.
Let me ask you a question. And this might be changing the course of what you're doing, Dave, but you just said they would have only scored, they still would have lost 12-10. I think they might have called different plays to get into field goal range, and that could have been a possibility. But
Randy called different plays. Come on, he has to go with what his paper says.
Did they lose their shot at the playoffs way back when they just said, all right, we're going to trust that Duck Hodges can do that, and didn't get somebody to come in here? I mean, even a Mark Sanchez who's retired, or did they lose it that?
You just brought up Bud Fumble.
Yeah, I understand that, and I know I'm going to get roasted for that. But we've noticed over the last 4 or 5 weeks that Duck was winning with mirrors when he won, and then that Cinderella was going to turn into a pumpkin in a big hurry. And I was wondering if this was just like, let's just go with what we got.
Next man up.
Well, yeah, Dave. And Dave has a point, but at the same time, it all depends on who's available. Some people are still in the live chat saying Colin Kaepernick. Like that was, I would never sign on for that personally, and it has nothing to do with the politics surrounding that man. I just never would have done it because he hasn't played for a long time.
And if we're going to run Randy Land's offense, he's not the right guy to run that offense.
No. And so you just have to ask, like, who's actually out there that is available. And if you're going to trade for someone, which I'm trying to think when Devlin Hodges took over, that was what, week 12 in Cincinnati? He came in, right?
When he started.
Well, no, he came in at halftime at the third quarter.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Oh, yeah.
Trade deadline had already passed. Am I right? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. So the trade deadline had already passed. So trading for like another backup from somewhere or trying to get Joshua Dobbs back, it wasn't an option because they couldn't. So for me, maybe if Landry Jones was just sitting around twiddling his thumbs, but he's signed to the XFL and they protect their contract, so they couldn't bring him back. I understand what you're saying, Brian. I wouldn't have been against it. It just, I don't know who was available at that time.
Here's my question.
I don't either.
Why did they try for Landry Jones? The XFL shot him down, but why did they try for Landry Jones? Because they knew the importance of having somebody in that already was familiar with the Steeler football system meant so much. People were still calling for Paxton Lynch so early in this game. Mike Tomlin addressed this on Tuesday. Even being the third string quarterback since September, whatever, he wasn't ready to run this offense.
Could it have been worse?
That's my question. But my thing is, if it's that bad that you can't have someone who's been there that whole time, and you just don't feel like we're not accustomed to him and they're not accustomed to us enough with all that, obviously they can't bring in someone that they're going to throw out there 2 weeks later when it comes to running everything. It's just, then guess what you need to do? Then did it look like the most complex thing in the world they were trying to run on offense? Didn't to be, because half the time I knew exactly what they were going to do when they came out with their personnel, with their formation. So,
well, you know what?
Question, Bryan.
And you guys are absolutely correct. But the last few preseasons, I've been calling for guys like Mike Moore. And you guys can laugh at me all you want. Anybody can laugh at me about Mike Moore, but I've been calling for him for the last couple of years, a guy like that, because you have a guy like Mike Moore, they're in the playoffs. You saw what he did with Kansas City this year.
What is his name?
Oh, Matt Moore.
Matt Moore?
Matt Moore, yeah.
You're meaning Matt Moore.
Okay, I just butchered that. But
Bud Dupree has killed him.
I was at that game when Bud Dupree almost killed him, and that was crazy.
And he came back.
I have a question for you guys here in a second, but let's get to some super chats that we've been waiting to get to. Snowman puts $5 in the tip jar. He says, I'm optimistic until I know what happens to Ben. Happy New Year's, fellas. Snowman, Happy New Year to you too. We appreciate those warm wishes. We don't know about Ben, and that's a scary thing because there's a lot riding on that guy coming back and being healthy. And it's anything but a certainty at this point. Kyle Smith puts $5 in the tip jar. Says it's popular now to hate on Juju, but I just think the kid needs a clean slate next year. I put more stock in the last year than this year for him. He was hurt for a lot of this season. Let's not forget that. I'll never forget.
He had that lingering foot for a long time, but it was playing through it.
Yeah, and there was I follow Jim Wexel, who writes for Steel City Insider, and he gives out a lot of detailed information that a lot of other beat writers don't. And he talked a lot about how sometimes lower body injuries, like a foot or an ankle, can lead to other stuff. He talked about Troy Polamalu when he had I think it was a PCL in his knee, and it was the same injury that Juju had. And he talked about how that was the same season that he strained his Achilles. If you all remember that one, that was when he hurt it intercepting Carson Palmer and returning it into the end zone. That was the famous video where he dove and just gets the football over the pylon in his right hand at Heinz Field against the Bengals. They can have a lingering effect. But I agree with what Bryan said in regards to, just the fact that they gambled. The Steelers gambled this year by not having a vested veteran backup. They took a gamble. It's something they typically always have. Think back under the Mike Tomlin quarterbacks that he's had. You think back to, I don't know if Brian St. Pierre was actually with Tomlin or Cowher. I can't think. I think it was Tomlin. I don't know. Dennis Dixon, Charlie Batch.
No, that was Cowher.
Okay. Charlie Batch was Tomlin at some point. Dennis Dixon was Tomlin. Who are some others that I'm thinking that I'm forgetting?
Byron Sandwich.
Byron Leftwich. Yep. So you're getting the trend that they typically have that vested veteran backup in case something happens, because let's be honest, Ben gets hurt more than he's healthy. All right. I wouldn't put it that way because the last few years he's been relatively healthy, but he typically misses at least 1 or 2 games. This year they gambled and they got burned. So my question for you guys is this. A lot of people are really hinging the 2020 season on Ben Roethlisberger's health, and I'm not going to disagree with that at all. Some people are saying just wait till Ben comes back with this defense. It's going to be fun. And I think that 2020 could be a good year. I want to see what they do in the offseason. My question is, do you think this team is one player away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender? Because I think everyone would admit they were not a legitimate Super Bowl contender in 2019. Bryan, we'll start with you.
I think if there was a veteran backup quarterback on that roster early on, that we would be really excited about them going into the playoffs right now, because they would be there, and 2, they probably would have gone 2-1 or 3-0 down the stretch in the last 3 games. If you had a guy like Case Keenum on that team this year, they're going into the playoffs, and they're possibly, and I'm not kidding, they're possibly having a week off next week and a bye.
So you're saying that in 2020, they are one player, i.e. Ben Roethlisberger, away from being a legitimate Super Bowl contender?
Yes, I am.
I love how you move into the microphone like you're
Look him on trial.
Yes, I have. That's what I said. Yes. Dave, what do you think?
I don't think you're ever one player away. I don't think anyone's ever one player away because injuries come into play way too much. I mean, this team put all their eggs in the Ben Roethlisberger basket for 2 seasons. If you're talking about not having a veteran backup, because they didn't have one last year.
Yep.
So they did it last year, and guess what? Ben played in all 16 games. Now he missed just a little bit of time in that Oakland game, and that's basically what kept the team from the playoffs. So you're all in on Ben Roethlisberger, and then you hope that maybe you have. I mean, when this, you guys know how I feel about Mason Rudolph. I felt when the Steelers drafted him that finally that the Steelers had someone that they were developing as a number 2 that could then be an answer like Ben was going to be way back in 2004. That guy that's down the depth chart, but if you got a call on him, maybe he can maybe he's ready to step up and show you what he can do. That just goes to show you how special Ben Roethlisberger was and is. So you bring Ben back, but you're one Ben injury away. You're one anybody injury away from anything. How do I say it? It is more likely for you to be one player lost away from not making the playoffs than you are to have one player gained to getting you to the Super Bowl.
What?
If you're going to encompass a season and you're like, if we just had one more player, we could be a Super Bowl contender. You're more likely to be that team that's even like a playoff team, and you're one player, and you could just lose one player to go from a playoff team to a not playoff team. I think it's more about who you lose than who you gain.
Go ahead, Bryan.
If it pleases the court, I'd like to
back up, man. You're too close to the flip a microphone.
Okay, so here's the deal with that. If you have a good quarterback this year, no, not even a good quarterback, a competent quarterback this year, the running game's better. The tight end, somebody yelled at me in the live chat for the tight end position. Vance McDonald's a whole lot better. If Ben Roethlisberger's in there, Vance McDonald's a whole lot better. You have the receivers are a whole lot better, and you could win with this group that you have right here. And I'm talking even if James Conner's hurt, you could win with Jalen Samuels and Benny Snell Jr. and Kareth White. You could win with these guys. And they would have been dangerous if they had that competent signal caller. They had a first-class defense this year. So they were one player away. And I know there's a weakness on defense that everybody's upset about with Terrell Edmonds. I think he had a rough year, but that's your weakest link on that side of the ball. He's not killing you. Okay.
Well,
what killed them was a quarterback.
You're right. The question wasn't about 2019. It's about 2020. So looking ahead, are they just one player away from being a contender? So I agree with everything you said about this season. I don't think they're one player away for next season because people, have you watched this offensive line? Does it look like it's ready to pave the way for the running game every single week? Not to mention the fact that the receiving core, who's going to magically come back to make this better? The receiving core didn't lose someone like Ben Roethlisberger lost for the year. We'll get them back next year. There's no one else that's just walking through that door, and let's not forget Dante Moncrief and all that free agent acquisition. Let's also not forget, this is what Dave always brings up, is free agency changes a lot of stuff. And salary cap implication changes a lot of stuff. And so, yes, Mr. Third and Fifth's hefty dead cap hit will be off the books next year, but that doesn't mean the Steelers are going to have all this cap space. Somehow Steeler fans think, oh my gosh, they're going to be no, they're actually going to be pretty tight up against the cap next year. Now the cap is going to increase as it does every year, and that means that the Steelers will be close, but I can see them making some cuts. And it's going to be tough for them to keep some of these players. I don't want to get too much into it because I want to focus on some of this stuff in future shows. But guys like Ramon Foster, I could see being a cap casualty because I don't think that his play has equaled his pay. You guys might disagree. That's just my thoughts. You might see someone like Vance McDonald, who is often injured and has his pay equal his play? Not so sure. You might lose someone like Bud Dupree via free agency. Or if you give him a franchise tag, that's going to eat in a huge chunk of your salary cap space, in which case you're probably going to lose a guy like Javon Hargrave, because I doubt they sign both of them back. And so all these things have a ripple effect, and it can completely change everything. Now, Stephon Tuitt will be back next year, and that's a plus. But at the same time, this team is never going to be the same. And so we can't – I asked the question. I don't think they're one player away. I think they're going to have a really good offseason. And the fact they don't have a first-round pick, they better hit on those mid-round picks big time in the NFL draft. So
in the salary cap era, fellas, no one is one player away.
No.
Never going to be.
No.
But if they had a quarterback this year, I keep going back, they're in the playoffs.
Probably. No, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the 4 interception game from Devlin Hodges, I mean, a veteran quarterback doesn't make those mistakes. So,
and the Browns game.
Yeah, you're right. Isaac puts $5 in the tip jar. He says, quick sidebar. Anyone else happy that the Patriots don't have a bye week and possibly won't make the Super Bowl? Yes, I am actually very happy, because once the Steelers are done, I honestly I get excited for little things like that. Brian, what about you?
I was, but I worry. I want I want them to get good enough to beat the Ravens if the Chiefs can't do it. I really want the Ravens out of there. Now, I said something at the beginning of the season about the Patriots, that if it was the Patriots with Antonio Brown against the Ravens in the AFC Championship game, I would root for the Ravens, which would be unheard of. However, I take that back, especially after today's game. I definitely take that back. If something happens and it might happen that Antonio Brown signs with the Saints, I will go away from everything I believe in to hope that they let him play, to go ahead and meet the Ravens in the playoffs to beat the Ravens. So I'm happy that I love the fact that there's a possible demise of the Patriots, but I'd make a deal with the devil to have the Patriots good enough to beat the Ravens. That's what I'm trying to say.
What about you, Dave?
Well, when it comes to the whole thing with the Patriots, I was so torn today with all the stuff going on early. I'm like, because the Patriots needed to lose in order for, if things fell out right where it was the strength of victory with the Steelers and the Raiders and all that. But Kansas City also needed to. You kind of wanted to have Houston have something to play for, and there was so much other stuff. But yeah, I really took the light of the Patriots eye, since that was the last question that we were asked, correct? Because you're looking at me very strange. Wasn't that the question?
I don't know if it was just my.
No, we're looking at you strange because your mic's doing something weird. That's why.
No, it was just, his internet connection was just a little jumbled there for a second. It's all good now.
Yeah. Okay. So, sorry about that. So yeah, and honestly, Tennessee has played notoriously well.
They're playing
in New England.
They're playing good football.
No, but I mean, they went in there and beat New England in New England with Mariota last year. That was one of the Patriots' losses of the regular season last year.
That's right. I forgot about that. So what is the AFC side of things wrapped up now in terms of wild card weekend and everything? What are those games?
Well, now that Kansas City is the 2 seed, and of course Baltimore is the number 1, it's Tennessee at New England.
Is that Saturday or Sunday?
Now, they did not mention that, and they won't do that until after tonight's game.
Okay, you're right.
Which is going to be a fantastic game. It's going on now, and I have no clue what's going on. But that's going to make the decision, because they put certain teams in prime time and certain teams on Sunday. Then the other game will be Buffalo will be traveling to take on the Houston Texans.
Not a lot of juice in those games for me. But that's the AFC, very top loaded. Everyone was waiting for those big time matchups in the divisional round anyway. So the NFC side of things is a little bit different. So we'll see how that goes. All right, so let's wrap this thing up. Final thoughts on this game in particular, not so much the season. Like I said, we're going to be talking about that for a few weeks as we break down things like free agency, potential cap casualties, all that stuff. Bryan, we'll start with you.
This was a game that even when you were out of it, you desperately wanted to win for pride. You wanted to have that winning season instead of an 8-8 season, and you wanted to have something to feel good about. But you were embarrassed by your rival that took pleasure in embarrassing you. And that was just, like I said at the beginning, my knee-jerk reaction was to hate the Ravens even more. I don't hate the Steelers in this game. I just hate what happened to them and that they could not get out of this hole. This was a winnable game for the Steelers, and it really was. They did not capitalize because they didn't do anything different.
Dave?
Yeah, when you're looking at this game, it was a big pride issue. It was, could they match last season's record even without Ben this year? You know, could they go in and do something against this team in this situation? And this game was just a really big letdown. And unfortunately, it kind of went in the way that I thought it would offensively when I kept waiting for them to just come out and surprise me and do something different and show that you could do something. And it didn't happen.
For me, living in Maryland, just as all three of us do, we now have to hear about how the Steelers starters lost to the Ravens backups. And that's infuriating. And it's going to be, I just hope and pray that the Ravens don't do anything this year. I would love nothing more than for them to have the best record in the NFL and to lose in the first round of their first round, meaning the divisional round of the playoffs. Will it happen? I don't know. We'll see. The Steelers season, though, is over. We now can cry over spilled milk. We can complain and moan about all the things that did or did not happen. And that's why we're here. What makes Behind the Steel Curtain and our podcast and BehindTheSteelCurtain.com great is that we are not talking heads that are a part of media journalism functions. And I don't even call myself a journalist. I'm a fan. Dave's a fan. He's a season ticket holder. Bryan's a fan. We just happen to like writing and talking about the Steelers. And so you're going to get a fan's perspective here at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. No agendas, just fans' thoughts. So to wrap this thing up, I thank everyone that's watched and listened throughout the season. Again, just know that basically we're going to continue to churn out content both on the website, BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and here on our podcast platform. If you didn't know that we have a YouTube channel and you're listening on audio platform, go to youtube.com, search BTSC Steelers Radio. And obviously, if you're on our audio platforms, give us a good rating, especially on iTunes. Give us a 5-star, give us a good comment. It all helps with exposure. We really, really appreciate it. If you're watching live on YouTube, like this video, people. Subscribe to our channel. We went over 5,000. Thank you very much. It was cool to finish this season with you three. We'll be here. We'll be here. Guys, thanks for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a wrap on the 2019 season. Dave's exasperated sound.
Can I say one thing?
What?
We keep all last offseason, we talked about, this has been such a long offseason. This has been such a long offseason. And tomorrow it starts. And that's why I'm sad. I don't get to sit down and watch the Steelers again until August. So I'm in mourning. I think a lot of us are in mourning for that reason, because we're just not going to get to see our Steelers play for such a long time. But keep tuning in, because we'll keep it alive through our shows and through our content.
We'll have to make sure Dave doesn't find a bridge.
And as disappointed as we are, very proud of this team, if I can speak for all of us.
You mean the Behind the Steel Curtain team?
Well, no, I was actually saying the Steeler team, but you know what? I'm very proud. I love going, on podcasts with Tony, Dave, Jeff, Lance. I went on with Lance this year. It was great. And, and all of you. Did I say you, Dave? All of you. I mean, I love this opportunity, and I love this opportunity to have everybody here in the live chat, except for a random troll here and there. But I mean, I love the fact everybody on the live chat, we're family, and it feels good. We're in this together. So the off season is going to start as a support group. Then we're going to get excited. Yeah, and it's all going to happen.
That's right. So there you go. there's a part of me that feels like Wes Hickok, I'll put this up there as the last thing he said. I'm kind of glad the offseason's here for us. It was a frustrating season. As intriguing as it was very frustrating in a lot of different ways. But hey, the streak continues. We're going into 2020 with the streak alive. 23 games. Let's go, baby. 2020. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you, I don't know, next season. Have fun. Good off season. Talk to you later.